things trying to keep me at home. First it was a cold, and then there was a storm, but still I managed. And I even had the chance to visit your lovely city this afternoon a little bit. I went to the library, great library, I love books. And there was this quote of Borges, I have always imagined that paradise would be a kind of library. So maybe a book can be a little bit of an oasis, also in difficult times for Greens. So yes, I'm coordinator of Oikos, which is the Flemish Green think tank. I'm also active at the Green European Foundation, and before I've been working as researcher, academic lecturer, MP, and what else? Yeah, not important. Let's say I live for my green ideas, whether it's researching, politics, or think tank. Just if I want to say something about the book, maybe one crucial insight that motivated us to write it was an encounter with, sorry, coincidence, an American Indian writer, Amitav Ghosh, who was just now here in the country. He's a great novelist. I wouldn't be surprised he would get a Nobel Prize the coming years, but he also has written 2 books on climate. And in his main thesis is that the ecological crisis is foremost a crisis of our imagination. We find it very hard to imagine how bad things can go. Imagine a year ago, someone would have said, don't go on holiday to Valencia because it rains too much there. They would say, oh, come on, take it easy. But we also find it very hard in our Western society to imagine a much better society. And so it's a call to action to our imagination, to really not just think out of the box, because that you do one day in a workshop and in the evening you're back in your box. It's how to kill your box. And so to take that seriously, we start the book with fiction, short story, in which we try to imagine how we can build a much better society in 10 years. Because you all know the scenario studies 2050, everybody agrees, Europe carbon neutral, of course, even corporations agree, but in 10 years. But we do that taking together a lot of policy measures that are on the table, are already developed, but we put them all together. And then, of course, the core of the book, why the title Enough? We first wrote the book in Dutch, and I didn't want to use the word degrowth in Dutch. So the interesting thing is we invented a new word in Dutch, but it's not the translator said it's impossible. Omgroei. It's growing in another direction. Omgroei. Omgroei. It doesn't exist, but everybody understands it. So that's also a little bit imagination. Anyway, then we thought what's the core message of our book? And I think the core message is enough. How to imagine an economy of enough where everybody has enough, but we also go after people having too much. And so how can we imagine an economy that respects planetary boundaries and strives for a good life for everyone? And I think it's really, how must I say, you have to change all the system. But the interesting thing is, you already talked about Tim Jackson. If I look back the last 15 years, there's a whole growing community of activists and researchers and politicians working on this new kind of economy. And also let's say the reason to write the book was also, last year there was a huge congress in the European Parliament, the Beyond Growth Conference. We were there with 3,000 people. Half of them were young people. activists, researchers, and this was really, you see, it's gaining momentum. Some people say I'm working on the well-being economy. Some people say I'm working on the post-growth economy, donut economy. But if you look at the proposals and the analysis, it always comes to the same. We need an economy that fulfills the basic needs of people, not the preferences that are told to us through advertisements. And just to say a last word, I think a key perspective to implement this new perspective is to remodel all systems in our society from the perspective of a provisioning system. And provision is a fantastic word. It comes from Latin, provision. You do two things at the same time. First, you think, what do we need tomorrow? And then you already start to provide it. I want to go hiking tomorrow in the mountains. So I already take my backpack and I say, oh, the weather in Ireland, I take a raincoat and I put it already in there. So I'm provisioning. And so how can we remodel our mobility system so that we provision mobility for everybody within planetary boundaries? How can we think about our food system so everybody has decent and healthy food within the planetary boundaries? And so that's, I think, a key challenge, but also a very nice perspective which you can implement on a city level, regional, on a national level. So, and the good thing is also other international bodies, like for instance, the Resource Panel of the United Nations, a few months ago they released a new report. They do it every 5 years, and they use the perspective of provisioning systems to remodel global economy and see how we can use much less resources. But the interesting thing about this report is they take everything what they think is possible, but they don't touch sufficiency, really. They don't go radical, and they don't manage to get into the planetary boundaries. And I talked to one of the authors, and he said, yes, it was a debate inside the authors, but it was one bridge too far. But I think we have to cross this bridge. If we really want an economy within planetary boundaries, we need really a downscaling of the flow of energy and resources while maintaining what I would call an ecological welfare society. That's maybe as an introduction.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan. Our next speaker is David Donoghue, who has had a very distinguished diplomatic career. But David, I'll let you tell a little bit about yourself and what you over the years, and if you could then maybe give your reaction to the book as well.
Absolutely.